So, I hope that and trust that you've been meeting with your teams over the last uh, couple sessions. We are moving very, very quickly now um, through a lot of the nuts and bolts of these sessions. We're going to be talking today about business plans, and I'm going to show you some examples of plans that I found workable. Um, uh, Unfortunately, our presenter is not going to be available, and I guess it's the other side of COVID now that I'm seeing that last, when before previously, this virtual academy was a space when people weren't moving around, and so you could get folks to make commitments. And so now that people are moving around, sort of kind of hard to have folks give up their free time. And so I understand it. So, but we're thankful that for those who are able to come into the space to share their knowledge and wisdom and expertise. We're always appreciative of that. But we have some really wonderful presentations to share this evening. And before we get started with that, I just again want to just go back and talk about some of the things I think that are important to just process for all of you is that, of course, building that intentionality among your team members. And so having discussions outside of this academy is real crucial to that. And so being able to share not only what your upsides are, but also your downsides in terms of some of the challenges that you may be facing or may anticipate encountering along this journey. I share this all the time that this cooperative work is really about relationships. You just can't put it any simpler to that. It's about relationships. Um, and so you're trusting each other, having confidence in each other is really critical to moving this process in terms of how you work together and build out your frameworks. And then the other part of that is how you bring others into the understanding of where you're at. Most of you have given thought to your business ideas, which is really good to hear. I've had a chance to meet with several groups already, and you shared your business ideas with me, which I really, really appreciated knowing. And then the other thing is that I've shared, and I shared a couple sessions ago around marketing, is that being able to do your research. Um, if you're looking at accelerating this process for yourself and your group and your team and your work, then certainly the research is going to be a real important component of that. And we'll talk about some more of that this evening as we explore business plans. Building out your ecosystems for advisement and support, reaching out beyond even this academy to other professional organizations, other cooperative organizations to gain advice and knowledge and support is certainly critical to amassing the intellectual knowledge that you need to move forth on building your platforms. Um, each of you are giving at least uh, uh, a shortened version of financing plan. And so while you may not need or may not need money at this point in time, there will come a time where you're going to need some financing. And so either you're going to do it through self-generation in terms of generating yourselves, or you're going to ask others to contribute, or you're going to set up a process where you may either seek some grant funding or some also borrowed capital. You're aware that we are launching our grant program for our cooperatives in this particular academy. So you all have been given our grant application. Michelle, you gave that all to everybody? Everybody has that. So that's not much, but it does help help you move some things around that $500. So hope all of you, take advantage of it. Um, one of the questions that came up recently was like the legal formation. And I know that we have an attorney in the room, and I know that he's already worked through that in terms of where his group is. But those of you who have not sought legal advice, we do have attorney that's coming on board in a couple of sessions that we're going to share with you um, how you may want to consider the legal formation for your cooperatives, whether it's going to be a Inc., whether you're going to be for-profit, nonprofit, whether you're going to be an LLC. We'll be able to share that with you around your legal formation. But more importantly, the formation of your governing documents, um, particularly your bylaws, that's going to govern how each member is held accountable to the co-op. It's going to lay out the roles and responsibilities um, of each member. It's going to, the document will also be explicit about how you onboard people into your cooperative, whether you incentivize them, um, whether you require them to pay some upfront dues. That certainly will be a part of what you will be deciding as you move forward on determining that. Registering your business is going to be important where you do it because some states do have uh, legal requirements that are different. Some are easier, some are a little more complicated, and some may meet your needs and some may not. So I know um, that's something that you're going to certainly have to consider as you look at registering, whether you register in District of Columbia or Maryland. You might want to, consider Delaware, where there's a no tax state. Um, and I've even have heard of people registering their cooperatives to work locally in Colorado because of their 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 legalese is a lot more suited to different kind of formats of cooperatives. So again, that's gonna, be some of the questions that may need to be answered when we engage the attorney. And then if not then again, research is really important. This is where you want to get that information out um, and make some decisive to help guide your decision making about where you register and how you register. And so those are the things that come off the checklist that we have been distributed out to you. Um, and so for all of you developing uh, this idea around cooperatives, and certainly I like to just want to always interject the importance of the wider collective, the wider ecosystem of cooperatives that are operating locally, regionally, and nationally. Um, because this support that you will need around collaborators who are in similar industries or service providing platforms that you may find yourself in is going to be very, very critical to help you grow. And so yeah, so we'll sit down and we'll hum through that in terms of what all that means in terms of developing the ecosystem. Some of you who are in different states are vested already with the ecosystem that's growing and that's emerging, and that's a good thing to have because there are people out there who are trailblazing this pathway for cooperatives. Um, and so sometimes I always think that you don't have to always recreate the wheel. Um, follow those who've done and absorb their knowledge and through their experiences. Um, and you'll get the chance to see some of that later on in one of our sessions where we have the cooperative exchange, where we're going to have some seasoned cooperatives that will come in to our space and share their experiences with you, around, again, the upsides to developing a cooperative. I have experienced, talking with folks who like to, there's a romanticism, there's something romantic about cooperative, and it is. When you're able to look inward and outward of developing businesses that serve a useful purpose. But again, it's very challenging work, particularly when you're working, with people that you've probably never done business with before, but you may have had other relationships with, but doing the business is a little different in terms of the work that's required. And so sometimes it does become personally challenging when you talk about onboarding members and even ourselves in terms of just being able to look out and have to imagine our role. You might have been a leader in some aspects in other areas, and in this area you may not be the leader. You may be asked to follow, and so I know that with egos that can be very, very challenging sometimes if you're a person who not accustomed to following but accustomed to leading, and how you do that. So folks, just wanted to share those little tidbits with you. Is there anything that you might want to share across the table with us this evening in terms of some things that you've learned over the last couple of weeks here or outside of here that you feel is important to this conversation that we have going on in this academy?
Yeah, I can share something quickly if that's cool.
Yeah, it's always cool.
Yeah, so me and Patrick, we met earlier today and last week, and one thing that we've been thinking about has been taking some of the materials that we got from this clinic, or for this incubator rather, as well as from like other spaces, and putting together like a political education document that we would use for when we were onboarding new members. And so, we got, stuff on like the basics, on development, on like the Black history specifically, and a couple other categories. But it's kind of been helpful for just me and Patrick as like we kind of are learning together and try to like start those habits around study, which you talked about when we did the session on the history of cooperative economics among Black folks, and cited Jessica's work. But also just thinking about it sort of as a forward-looking things, like, as we figure out what we need to learn, what we want to learn, how do we document and keep track of these things? That way, when we bring on a new member, we can be like, look, over the course of, X amount of months, look at, this video, this article, and then sort of be prepared to sort of talk about it as part of their political education. So that's something we're in the very initial stages of fleshing out, but we've started the conversation, started to compile some information and materials.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Julian. I think that that's a good way to catalog knowledge, and particularly for those that you anticipate bringing into your cooperative. So I think that's a great way of having orientation material, introductory material ready to share, because as you grow your cooperatives, and I want all of you to imagine that it could be rapidly accelerated, and people just knocking at your door, and then how you prepare to onboard them. I had a conversation with a group in Baltimore this morning that's has taken on a project to clean up a certain neighborhood, and so they have a fiduciary that they've been working with, but they still need a lot of work in terms of training individuals around cooperative models. So I'm hoping that that we can share something enough with them to help them onboard these new members they're looking at bringing on board, but also too helping them as a executive body to further their knowledge around how to do this work and organize this work around cooperatives. So so again, thank you, Julie, for sharing that with us this afternoon, this evening rather. And so we're going to get started. Tiana, are you there? Oh, okay, okay. On a train ride. Oh man. Well, okay. Oh, you're visiting your dad. Okay. All right. All right. And you're missing two of your members, Sasha and Ashante. So hopefully they will show up as well. So Michelle, let's get started with the first presentation from the state of Maryland that we've got from Ms. Fund, who forwarded that presentation to us today. Hmm? Okay. Carolyn. Thank you. Okay, Carolyn. Okay. So this presentation was provided to us from Ms. Jennifer Fund, who's a startup specialist with the Maryland Small Business Development Center. And so I'm going to hopefully do an adequate job. I hope to do an excellent job in terms of going through Ms. Fund's presentation for us this evening. Next slide, Michelle. How to create an effective business plan. All right, why do you need a business plan? And I want to make this this session on business planning as interactive as I can possibly make it. Does anyone have, and you can unmute your mics, anyone have a sense of why a business plan is needed?
A business plan is needed. This is Angelique. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Angelique, for announcing yourself.
Of course. A business plan is always needed. So in case you want to go after loans or grants, so people can know your executive functions, your missions, your visions, your goals, and how you plan to sustain your business or what you need a loan for. It gives a person an overview of everything about the business that you need them to know.
Okay. All right. Even when you're not afforded the opportunity to talk directly to a funder, this business plan lays out the game plan in terms of how you plan on proceeding going forward. So it speaks for you when you can't speak for yourself. And it's going to be it's really going to be very critical and vital to the success of your business venture when you have a business plan that you have spent time and energy developing. In terms of the business plan itself, would it be more advisable for someone else to write your business plan or for you to write your business plan? Think on that question. Is it more advisable that you hire someone to write your business plan or that you spend time writing your business plan for your business? We'll come back to that question later. Next slide, Michelle. So you want to ask yourself these questions. What type of plan do you need? And you can have a mini working plan, which is a shorter plan, maybe about 10 pages or less, and talk about your starting points and how to determine what type of business you're creating. Or you can have that working plan, which is an outline of how to build and operate your business. And the third is the presentation plan, which is developed for individuals other than the owner. This could include investors or bankers. And most folks are probably right here in along this line of the presentation plan, because they want others to be able to evaluate the solvency of their business. And if they're looking at particularly securing financing, they want them to make sure that the investors and those funders that they're trying to appeal to clearly understand the business directory that the business is on. Who are the managers? Who are the directors? What are their skills and expertise? How much knowledge have I put into understanding my product? Who is my market? All these things, comprise that presentation plan that you want to be able to work on. But if you're not at that level, then maybe the mini plan, a shorter version of that will suffice for your business, because you're just starting out. You don't have some of the research or data that a business will have that has been in operation for a period of time. Next slide, Michelle. So the basic structure of your business plan. So what's SWOT? Strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Who is your client? And some of this we went through a couple weeks ago with the marketing plan. What's your story? How do you tell your story? How you evaluate your competition? How much have you invested in terms of time and resources into your business? What is your marketing strategy? How will clients benefit from the services that you provide? So in the basic structure of your business plan, your business concept is going to describe your business, its market, its products, its organizational structure, and management. And so you want to be able to articulate the organizational structure. Who's the CEO? What are their experiences with this business? Have they worked their business before? Are they new in the business? How many years they've been in business? And what strengths do they bring to this particular business in terms of their skills as a CEO or president? It could be a director. It could be anyone. It could be a staff person. So you want to be able to tell, and get folks comfortable who the management is. So that may be a part of your resume building and denoting your experiences. Who's your market? We talked a couple weeks ago about market segmentation. How do you segment the market? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in this business plan. And your product, knowing your product, knowing your service, because that's a part of telling your story. So if you don't know your story, then it's going to be very difficult to articulate that to anyone else. Market analysis, looking at your marketplace and the description of your target customer audience. So some of you have already begun to define your market. And so some of that will now require that you do some research around demographics or infographics and looking at what your needs are, or your buying and your selling habits. And most importantly, being able to weigh out whether or not your market is going to support the competition that you bring into it, or is it already saturated with a competitive competition that you would have to compete against? your financial analysis. And so if you're starting out new, you probably don't have a balance sheet. You may have no money in savings because you're new. And so if you're starting out in that sense and you're looking to have someone invest, then you're going to paint your financial analysis a little differently than someone else who's been in business for a while, who has cash revenue, who is cash in the bank, who may have a strong balance sheet to support their business growth. So you're gonna have to spend some time, doing these kind of analysis and incorporating them into your business plan, the market analysis, as well as the financial analysis. Mm-hmm. And I see three components that are really important to a business plan, and particularly if you're looking at strategic plan, for those of you who may go down the route of forming nonprofits. The market analysis, the financial analysis, and being able to describe who the leadership is and what the strength that the leadership bring into this business. So if you're looking at a business where you have no expertise and no knowledge base, it's going to make your investors very, very uncomfortable. I just want to, you'll see that from the beginning, because they're going to talk about the strengths of the leadership and who's on that leadership team. So for all of you, as you continue to build out your framework, document what you're doing so that when that time comes, you have some story to tell around the work that you bring and experience that you bring into the space. Next slide, Michelle. Okay. Again, research. I talked just about that earlier. So you got to research your product, your market, and your expertise objectively. And so, the census is a good place to get data, and there are other platforms where business data is collected and distributed out. And so get an understanding of your market through researching your products, researching your consumers, so that you can be very objective about how you're going to approach. I said earlier about having outside resources in your ecosystem. And so you're not expected to know everything, folks. If you're not an attorney, you're not an attorney. If you're not an accountant, you're not an accountant. But you want to be able to have relationships with the professions that you need to get advice and guidance from relative to your business. So start to build your Rolodex of people that you meet that can be useful and helpful to you as you grow and begin to move along the pathway of growing your businesses. Next slide, Michelle. Okay, here we're gonna just start talking about how do you really lay out the business plan. And so for those of you who've done the report writing or done proposals or things of that nature, before your reader gets into the heart of your document, you want to give a summarization of what you are proposing or what you have researched. So the first thing that you want to do in your business plan is do an executive summary. And so that's the first section. But note, it's the last section that should be written. And so why do you think that the last section that you should write is your executive summary? Why do you think, Patrick?
Well, because you'll have a full conception of your business once you go through all of the other measures of thinking about your business.
Man, that was a 450-foot home run. Thank you. That's what it was, a 450. Yes, because you can't write your summary if you have not gone through the process of all these other sections or processes that you need to get some knowledge base around. So once you've gone through the process, then you can come back and summarize it in the executive summary. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing that. Because you need all that information. Next step, Michelle. Okay. Okay. Step 2, write your company's description. So you all should be at some point, at this point in time, if you're working with an idea that you're looking at growing, you should be able to now to articulate that in a written form, what that business idea is. So of course, general information is your business name, address, telephone number, email address. That's the basic information. And then of course you want to describe what your legal entity is and who are the owners. So this is just the basic information you want to give on your company, the purpose of what you're doing or product you're serving, the type of business, your goals, your industry, any professional relationship fit, which is really your what I will call your professional team. Who is your attorney? Who is your accountant? So you want to make sure that make sure that people know that not only are you strong in what you bring to the table, but you have a strong team working with you. And so that's really critical in terms of step 2. Moving on to step 3, your market analysis. Who is your target market? And we had the similar conversation. We went through the market analysis. Who's your target market? Are they young? Are they old? Are they educated, uneducated? Are they coming from DC? Are they coming from the surrounding area of Maryland? Or are they coming from throughout the country? You want to be able to determine your target market and who you're trying to impress your product or service upon. And of course, when you're looking at your target market, you're taking in, again, your competitive edge and doing a competitive analysis of who your competition is. And while you may not be in a competitive state of mind, you do want to know what ability affects your absorption rate in terms of you absorbing a part of that market. So say that there are 10 Starbucks within a 1 mile radius, and I want to start a coffee shop. Well, it's not a good idea. You have 10 established Starbucks already operating. So could I do a coffee product? Yes, I could. But could it be built on the same model that a Starbucks is built on? I would find that very challenging competitively. Doesn't mean that I can't sell coffee, but the model as they have been defined as a coffee shop is probably one I would not want to venture into. So you want to be able to do the competitive analysis about listing those strengths and weaknesses and the potential impact on your business. All right. Like I said, you could sell coffee, but you may not sell a lot of coffee enough to sustain a business. So you may have to do something a little more creative aside from just saying we're going to be a traditional coffee shop. Next step 4. Okay. Organizational structure. So for those of you who are working environments right now, you know there's an org chart to your companies or your agencies that you work to. And so even in your business plan, you want to note your organizational structure. Who's the CEO? Who's the CFO? Who's the COO? Who's the directors? Who are the managers? Going down, detailing each operational phase of the company and who's doing what. What are their responsibilities? And then most importantly, how do all this connect, again, to an organizational structure? So you want to spend some time thinking about that. Because again, you're selling this out to folks who don't know jack bean about who you are. And so they're going to ask the question about who's doing what and what do they bring intentionally into the space to help grow this particular business. So your organizational structure is really important. Some things you may need, some things you may not need. You may not need a CFO. You may not need a COO. Maybe you don't need an executive manager. But as you begin to build out your business, you'll know based on what you're trying to, how you're trying to operate and what you're trying to deliver, what roles we're going to have inside this organization. Step 5, Michelle. Describe your product or services. Well, no one should know your product or your service better than you. So whether you're going up on the elevator, as they talk about the 30-second elevator pitch, you should be able to articulate what your product and service is. Why are you selling it? Who are you selling it to? How is it going to benefit your consumer? How is it going to benefit the community that you may be targeting? What is the difference between your product that you're selling and your competitor's product? Well, I can tell you that Starbucks coffee tastes a lot different than the coffee that I get at McDonald's. It tastes a lot different. And so you want to be able to actually be able to articulate that yourself. What is different between what you're doing and what someone else is doing when you're marketing the same product to consumers? Step 6, Michelle. Of course, step 6, going back again to that marketing strategy we talked about a couple weeks ago, is that you want to be able to write all this down, explain how you plan on penetrating the market. Show me your plan. So if I'm doing a coffee shop, am I just doing coffee? Am I selling coffee beans? Am I selling other related coffee products? Do I have a different variety of coffees that I'm marketing? And if I am, how many of those marketed coffees am I trying to sell each day? How about the coffee mocha? Do I need to sell 100 cups of that a day at $6 a cup? Or do I need to sell my early bird coffee at $3 a cup? How many cups of coffee do I need to sell of that? So you want to put this in your marketing strategy and sales strategy, but also you want to put this in numbers. You want to put this in numbers that you can see in terms of volume and pricing. Item 7, Michelle. Okay. Tomorrow, we're going to have presenters from the CDFI Shared Capital. And you'll get a chance to really talk to lenders about how they evaluate you as a potential borrower. So for those of you who have accelerated this process before you got into this academy, that may be some of the conversation you want to have with these lenders tomorrow. But what you need to know is this when you're talking with lenders about borrowing. How much money will you need? How will the money be used? And how long are you asking for repayment in terms of the terms and conditions? Do I borrow at 6% over $100,000 or 6% over 3 years? Or do I borrow that same money over 10 years? And what is my basis for determining how long I want the repayment to go out? That's when you want to be able to take, as I said earlier, in size 6, you want to put this into a financial pro forma so that you can look at, the financing revenue that you are creating versus the debt that you'll be paying on. So again, you want to know how much money you're needing and how you're going to use that money. I'm using to buy capital, replacement for my machinery. Am I using it as a surplus in the event that I run into a dry spot where I don't have revenue and I may need to have some extra cash in account that helps me to continue to fund my business? And if that's the case, then if I'm not generating money, then how do I pay on the debt? How do I structure my payment schedule? These are questions that either you might want to be asking yourself, or you want to have someone on your team that can help articulate this in written form, in some kind of spreadsheet. Item 8. Loan packaging. During my early years in nonprofit housing development, I took on a lot of roles, and one of the roles I took on was loan packaging, where I got to take a real look at what lenders were requiring of us as a nonprofit when we were seeking financing. And so people are going to ask you for a lot of information. They're going to ask you for your personal financial statement, because they want to know, first of all, if you're the loan guarantor, what is your credibility on repaying this loan if it goes into default? Because again, it's going to come down to whether or not you'll be able to pay this debt in the event that you do lose revenue over a period of time. So they want to know what your personal statement is. We heard a lot around Donald Trump over the last years in terms of how many times he filed bankruptcy. And he marketed himself as a real strong business person. But at the end of the day, he might have filed bankruptcy 6 or 7 times. And so a real lender certainly will question that, because it speaks to your knowledge, experience, and managing of resources. The company balance sheet, we saw a couple of weeks ago in terms of last week, matter of fact, looking at that balance sheet. So you want to have a healthy balance sheet. You want to show equity, you want to show low debt, and that becomes on the heels of having a really healthy balance sheet. And your income statement, you want to show that you're in the black and not in the red when it comes to income. And of course, your cash flow is how frequently those dollars are flowing through your cash register. And so you want to have a healthy cash flow. So when you're creating income, you have a healthy cash flow, because you're now taking your income, you paid on your debt, and that's going to create your cash flow. So yes, managing the flow of income, paying off the debt that you owe, and at the end of the day, what does that mean in terms of you having cash flow? Do I want negative cash flow or positive cash flow? You want positive cash flow. Yeah. And I talked last week about some of the things about why people look at finances. Yeah, because, you know, some of the traditional problems is that when you don't have all four of these items lined up and making sure that there's a balance between all of them and they're all showing good, positive statements, then it's going to limit your capital that you're able to borrow. Again, you know, you'll be able to share this with the lenders tomorrow, in tomorrow's session. It's important that you do good record keeping. I shared last week. One of the things I've seen in this work that I've been doing all these years is that if you don't keep good books, you open yourself up for real scrutiny. So you want to make sure that your record keeping is impeccable. Don't try to do it yourself. Hire someone to do it. And then make sure that it's done properly. You may monitor them and check what they're doing, but ensure that your record keeping has no scrutiny lodged around it. You know, this failure to seek outside help, no, you don't want to be in that situation. That's why I said earlier about building your team. You want to make sure you have the proper legal, accounting, business advisors, whomever you need to substantiate and justify your existence as a business. You want to make sure you have the good help around you. And as a manager, know what you know and know what you don't know. Don't put yourself in a position where you're opted to speak on or oversee areas that you have no expertise. So it's important to know what you know and know what you don't know. And what you don't know, find people who do know and have that expertise. You know, I shared the story about Sam Walton, who was the founder of Walmart. Sam Walton was an illiterate individual, but he had enough business savvy to know that he had to hire people with certain levels of expertise. I have a friend he's an excellent photographer, but he's a poor business person because he doesn't want to spend his time going through all of this that we're going through right now. He just wants to shoot photos, and he does it very, very well. I see Julian's raising his hand there. Julian, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, shit. I had a question about the personal finance statements. Is it, in your experience, that particularly for co-ops, where obviously you have multiple owners, where there is a need for multiple members to provide a personal guarantee? And, or if not, what is some of the implications of not having a personal guarantee aside from maybe getting a smaller loan and maybe having a worse interest rate? Or are there other things that are at play?
Great question, Julian. This loan packaging was speaking of the normal underwriting criteria. But when you look at a co-op, your underwriting is a much different underwriting. I'm writing on the strength of the co-op. Who are the members? How long they've been in existence? How strong are their bylaws? How are their articles in corporation structure? I'm using it as a lender. They're going to use a different criteria for evaluating underwriting co-ops versus this traditional 3C model that traditional banks and business lenders underwrite. Well, co-ops is a different model, right? Because I want to know how strong are your bylaws. And so I'm not asking for personal statements on all the owners. I'm looking at the collective as a group. How long you been in existence? I'm looking at your minutes. How decisions made. Yeah, great question. At our upcoming conference, and I mentioned the conference, we're going to be having a session on between banks and CDFIs in terms of how they underwrite the work of cooperatives. But yeah, you're being looked at differently as a co-op versus a traditional business in terms of underwriting for financing. Go ahead, Patrick. I see your hand is raised.
Yeah. Is this, I'm assuming they won't give loans to us if we don't have a history with revenue with because it'll just be a too risky of a loan unless there's government programs that give them support. Is that a false assumption on my part?
Yeah, yes, it is. Because, one of the things that, has changed in the financing world is that, startup businesses are looked at a little differently now. There might have been a time where as a startup business, you had to bring a certain amount of capital into the space. But capital is looked at differently now. Your intellectual capital is weighted as well. And so it's about telling the story and having a market plan that supports, the story that you're trying to sell. There's a group that I'm working with now that came through our Capital Academy last summer, who've been working on their business plan now for a whole year. And so now they're at the point now they're ready to launch. And so we see now, even with the District of Columbia and other jurisdictions, they're giving grants to small businesses. But still, and I won't dismiss this, there's still a lot of work that has to go on around cooperatives and funding and financing cooperative businesses. And so it may mean that you may need to be a little more innovative. Maybe you might do some crowdfunding to get some initial capital infused into your cooperative. Maybe you might have to do some a form of setting up a pathway for investors to invest in your cooperative. There's a group out in San Francisco that sells securities. That's how they raise capital for the work they do. They sell securities. And they sell, well, securities means shares. So you could buy a share, that goes to the work that they're doing. So as a cooperative, I would certainly strongly say, think outside the box. Be innovative. Because there are a lot of ways to offset some of those requirements that the traditional lenders require. And so the group that's coming into our space tomorrow, Shared Capital, is a national CDFI that only funds, hear me, only funds cooperative businesses. So I'm quite sure their underwriters have probably seen every modeling, or most modelings, when it comes to underwriting cooperative businesses and laying out groundwork around their requirements. Let's go to the next slide, Michelle. Okay. Here we're coming back now to the executive summary. So now that you've accumulated all of this information from step 1 to step 7, now you're going to have to write your executive summary detailing that to that. So for those institutions that will want to fund you, that they get a snapshot of who you are in your executive summary. And so these are some of the things that will go into your executive summary. your owner's name and their credentials, your products and your services, your market, competition, the amount of money you need, how you're going to plan on repaying it, and how long it will take to repay it. So that will all go into your executive summary, which will lead individuals to get an understanding of who you are, what you're asking for, and giving them the confidence to say, oh, this is maybe a business that we want to invest in. Again, I want to go back to what Patrick's question was and what, Julian pointed out, that cooperative businesses, you're going to be weighted differently. And so you want to be able to share that with a financial institution that understands who you are and what your ask is. And so when you weight it on your ability, you're weighted equitably and equally with others, such as yourself, who's in the space. Okay? All right. Is that the final slide, Michelle? Oh, it's not over yet. Yes. So again, this is just creating a appendix for your business plan. If you want to call it your table of content, you can call it table of content. But you want to make it a readable document where people are able to go to the various different sections as they want to pull out information around your business and how and your operation. Is there a slide after this one? Oh, I like that. So your business plan, as Ms. Funk says, is a living document, and you should revisit it and edit when appropriate. So what she's saying to all of us is that don't just write a business plan and think it's going to live the life of your business. Go back and revisit it because there are things that change in the market. There are things that change in pricing your product. There are things that change in leadership. So you want to be able to note and document these changes because it is an organic document. It is an organic document that requires that you revisit it and update it, within the appropriateness of the time that you're in operation. Yes. That's right. It is a living document. Life happens. Things do happen in life. Now, last year, during this pandemic, started in March, ending in, particularly running through the up until early this year, we lost a lot of small businesses that may not and could not adapt to the COVID. Yeah, lost a lot. And of course, as small business owners and again, going back to the capacity of your cooperatives, you know, education is the key, to sustaining cooperatives. If you're investing all the knowledge in one or two individuals, then you're creating a cooperative that's not going to be very successful. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to be a Harvard MBA, but it means that everybody has to be able to bring some level or grow through some level of knowledge around the business that you're operating as a cooperative. And that's why your bylaws are important, articulating what those roles should be. Mhm. Next slide, Michelle, is that it? Questions, all right. Well, thank you, Ms. Fun. We certainly enjoyed your presentation and certainly covered a lot of material. Um, Are there any questions at this point in time? It's about 6:15 before we take our biological and stretch breaks. Are there any questions that anybody wanted to ask or anything anyone wants to put on the table for discussion? No. Okay, we're good. All right. Well, folks, it's about 6:15 on ahead. Let's take a 15-minute break, take care of your needs, and let's come back in the room promptly at 6:30. We'll get started. We'll go through the second half of this presentation on business plans, and then hopefully we'll be able to conclude early this evening. So I'll see you all in the room at 6:30, and I'm going to call right. Thank you. So we looked at the technical aspects of a business plan, and so I want to just take us through a actual written plan with with a different kind of look at it. And so, for those of you who are looking at developing business plans for your business, one of my strongest recommendation is don't let anyone write your business plan for you. They can assist you, but don't pass that on to anyone to write for you, because you need to know and should know what is needed in your business and for your business. Because at some point, you're going to have to stand before someone and articulate what's in that document. And so you don't want to find yourself in a situation where being asked questions and that you can't respond to because you've not written the document. So yes, get as much expertise and around you as you can to assist you, but don't allow anyone other than yourself to really put time into writing your business plan, because no one knows your business better than you. No one. No one will know your business better than you. So that's my recommendation going forward regarding the business plan. So Michelle, let's go with the next slide. So we're talking this evening again about business plan and writing a business plan. So let's go on with the next slide. So we're going to look at the business plan for a coffee shop. I must have had a lead in because I was talking about coffee earlier. And I guess because I see an explosion of locally owned coffee shops. And so we decided to take a look at a business plan for a coffee shop. And I mentioned to you one of our team participants in our summer of 2020 academy was looking at and has now moved more aggressively and proactively to actually getting some funding for a coffee shop idea that they wanted to establish in the District of Columbia. Next slide. Okay. Okay. The big idea, your coffee shops drinks. That was the big idea. Next slide. Okay. So they took a look at the industry across the board, across the country, and saw that there were 20,000 coffee shops in the USA. They generated over $10 billion in combined revenue. 85% of them have a gross margin of success. That's more than 3 out of 4 that started became successful. That is a excellent number when you get to 85% success rate. Most are generating around $50,000 in revenue per worker. And that revenue increased 10% each year. So what we saw in this industry was a very lucrative, productive industry. A lot of people must be drinking coffee. Next slide. So here was the market and customer segmentation. 21% of this coffee shop will come from local residents. 36% will come from tourists. 29% from passing travelers. 7% of their market share will come from students, and they get another 7% from local businesses. So when you sit down and think about who your market share is, think in terms of this as an example, where you're getting your market for your co-op business. Where is it coming from? And so you want to be able to document that. Next slide, Michelle. Okay. So they took those customers that they said was their market share, and they wanted to see how they could increase the growth potential of that particular market. Then when they looked at the growth potential of increasing their market share of that market, supporting the business, then they start to put the dollars amount to it in terms of year 1, year 2, year 3, in terms of revenue projection from those market shares. So as you now sit down and think through modeling your business plan, here's a straightforward way of looking at your market share, increasing your market share, and how that equates dollar-wise. And we'll get to understanding these numbers in terms of how they got to these dollar numbers. Next slide, Michelle. So in their market business plan, they looked at 3 offerings that they were going to offer their clients. They're going to offer them bagged coffee, and you see that in Starbucks. Coffee drinks, you see that in Starbucks. You know, you have early morning mocha, and you know, I don't frequent Starbucks that often, but I know that on their drink list, they got cold coffee, hot coffee. I think they have smoothies. So they have a lot of different drinks. And then of course they do food. This particular coffee shop decided to do local food. And that could be sandwiches, fruits, whatever they thought were of the appetite of their customers. But they had 3 items that they were marketing out as saleable items to their customers. They could come and pick up their bag of coffee beans. They could come and enjoy a good drink, hot or cold. And of course, they could grab a little bite to eat, maybe a breakfast sandwich or a lunch sandwich, or maybe a fruit bowl of some sort. Next slide. Okay. Here's the revenue model that they attached to those three items. They wanted to sell 30 to 40 different varieties of coffee, bag coffee, with different flavors, brew strengths, and different regions. And so they wanted to they wanted to price them as anywhere from $4 to $40 per pound, averaging $15 per pound across the board. So they've really taken their product and said, okay, we have a good product, and this is how we want to price it to our customers. Next slide, Michelle. So they did, again, another similar model with the coffee beverages. They wanted to sell 3 different cup sizes. And this was a real good learning lesson for me, because I didn't think in these terms when I started to view this slide in terms of how coffee shops operate. So they priced it from $2.50 for a 12-ounce cup to $5.75 for a 20-ounce cup. So, and that 20-ounce cup would be latte. And so here again, 3 different sizes of coffee priced differently from the 12-ounce to a 20-ounce. Next slide, Michelle. And I mentioned they were selling local food, so they're selling locally sourced food. That could be, again, anything from sandwiches to bagels, burritos, pastries, cookies. And so they had three items that they were placing their sales revenue on: coffee beans, coffee drinks, and local and food. 3 different revenue generating sources for this particular coffee shop. All right, next slide, Michelle. So when you look around at their sales forecast, they gave a 3-year sales 3-year sale projection on their total sales across the board. Their total COGS across the board, and then a net profit across the board.
Ron, what is COGS?
That COGS is an acronym for
goods.
Excuse me?
Sorry.
Did
Cost
somebody
of
say
goods
something?
sold.
Repeat that again, Patrick.
It's the cost of goods sold.
Yeah, thank you. So here their total sales was 702 the first year. The total cost of goods sold was $12,000. So that's what it cost them to produce or purchase these products. Then of course the net profit after they sold and distributed out, the net profit was $490. So as you sit down and do your modeling here and looking at your sales, your cost of goods sold, and your net profit, then you hit that bottom line of net profit, what your revenue be. So in the case of those of those who may not be doing a coffee shop, but maybe doing a goods or service, you would put maybe your total cost of contracts as the total number of contracts that you are securing. Your cost of goods sales may be just your cost of doing business, your salary, your overhead, operations, etc. Then after you minus that out, then you can come down to the bottom line, what your net profit is. Yeah. So they did a 3-year projection on that. And each year they were in the black in terms of their net profit. Now, of course, if you invert this net profit number from 490 in terms of cost of goods sold to the cost of goods sold number down to net profit, then obviously you see what's happening. You're operating in the black. So your pricing, knowing how to price and how to operate your business, what these numbers are telling you is very, very critical. As they say, the bottom line, making sure that your bottom line is your bottom line in terms of never affecting your net profit. And so what happened last year with many businesses, they lost sales. They still had product they had purchased and couldn't sell. And then of course, they gained no net profit, which means that many of them operate right in this area of the black. That's what happened during COVID for many small businesses. Sales dropped off. Many of them had pre-purchased products and other items. And then at the end of the day, they weren't generating any profit, so they wound up going into the black, and which led many of them to go out of business. Next slide, Michelle. So here they put their sales forecast on a graph. And this is really good because it gives you a good picture of how you're doing. You can't see too much, but the bar graph to your left is your total sales. The one in the middle is the cost of goods sales sold. And then the last one is the net profit. So you can see how these graphs are looking across the board. And it gives a good presentation of where your business is. Next slide, Michelle. Okay. We didn't discuss this in the first presentation, but developing a timeline for goals is again, is something not necessarily for your lender or your presenter. It's for this, where I would think is for you and setting your benchmarks. So the question I would pose to all of you: have you sit down and sit down and set a timeline in terms of what things are you trying to get done? Your article, going back to your checklist, your articles of incorporation, your business plan, your marketing plan. Have you put a calendar to that, to those things? When you plan on securing funding? When you plan on bringing on new members? So this is going to guide you. This is not for your lenders. This is going to guide you to meet certain benchmarks down the road as you proceed forward. Right. In this case, this is done for the business. They wanted to have that marketing plan done. They wanted to secure funding. They wanted to build out for the new space. They wanted to have the grand opening. And of course, they wanted to get to the bottom line in terms of having 700 plus daily customers. And that was the goal they set for a 9-month period. Next slide, Michelle. Again, in the last presentation, I shared, or Ms. Fun shared, the importance of your team. So here is the team: the manager, the owner, the key employee. Next slide, Michelle. Okay. This is what a snapshot of their balance sheet looks like. The profit margin each year was very steady. The assets to liabilities had a great percentage attached to it. The equity to liabilities was looking good too, because they're all in the black, they're none in the red. And the assets to equity was looking good. So this is a good snapshot of the financial position of this particular business. And they projected this out over a 3-year period. This is what their goals were for the next 3 years. I don't know whether they achieved them, but this was how they laid it out in terms of what they were looking to achieve in terms of their financial ratios. Next slide, Michelle. Okay. Here is a liquidity test that they put in order, because they wanted to determine over time their cash to assets. And why would one want to determine what my cash to assets were in a business plan or in knowing my business? Well, keep in mind that, cash still is king. And assets, yes, you may have assets, but those assets may not be totally owned by you. They could be rented assets or lease assets or assets that you're paying debt on. But the cash is real dollars that you've accumulated over a period of time. So again, on your balance sheet, yes, you show your assets, but many of your assets that you may show on your balance sheet will have some type of debt tied to it. Balance against your cash reserves. One of the things I like to in my management of particularly nonprofits, I like to have great assets that have no debt. That's always a goal. If we own a building right out with no debt other than taxes, insurances, wonderful. I don't want to be be levied in asset debt. I like to have cash. That's my management style. I like to have cash. Good cash and low debt on my assets. Next slide, Michelle. Again, just another way of laying out those graphs that they laid out. Looking at this success rate, the top line is the profit margin, and the bottom line is the asset test. And you can see that asset test increasing, going up. And so that bottom line in terms of the profit margin, you can see it increasing over years as well. And it went from, I think it's 12% up to almost 18, the profit margin.
Another question, what does asset, because when I see asset, I think of one thing.
What do you think? Asset, what do you think of? We're talking finances now.
I know, that's why I'm asking, because that ain't what I'm thinking of.
Well, it's what they call in business a acidity test. And so it could be also equated to negative in a way of negative assets. So that when you look at over here, you see at 6.6%, and it leveled off in year 2, and then it started to increase in year 3. Now I don't know what was going on from year 2 and 3, which prompted the increase. With that asset, I don't know what prompted it to go up. I could speculate to say maybe the debt on the building, maybe they refinanced some debt here in year 2 and took on more debt in the building, or maybe took cash out of the building. I don't know, or maybe made more acquisitions on equipment. That could have been one of the things they did as well. But it's hard to say from here. It could have been the acquisitions that they took on in terms of new equipment, maybe new employees, despite the increase going up. Next slide, Michelle. Okay. So we explored in the first session, just again, looking at major competitors. And this one looked at the Starbucks that was 1 mile away from this particular coffee shop. It started a specialty coffee chain, predominantly American, in 1982, 99% of company owned. So it gives a profile of one of the major competitors and what their revenue has been, how they started, what their ownership rate looks like. Most of these are company owned, so it's very few franchises that are attached to this at this point in time to the Starbucks company. Then you look at their global reach. They're in 30 countries. And again, And the store sales increased in some stores from 10% up, increased by 10% since 2002. So again, understanding who your competition is. Next slide, Michelle. And also, again, Caribou Coffee. And I know both of these coffee chains are in the District of Columbia, but when I've seen them, they're almost blocks away from each other. But they're both still operating in the district. And this Caribou and the Starbucks, I know both of them are located along the 14th Street corridor, coming up from Thomas Circle, going up through Columbia Heights. Go ahead, Michelle, next slide. And Tully's, I'm not that familiar. I don't think I've seen them in the district. But again, here's another coffee chain. So you have three major coffee chains that are operating in proximity to this particular coffee shop. And Tully seems to be the closest at 400 feet. So they're like right next door. Go ahead, Michelle. Okay. Last session, we talked about funding. And so in the chart we distributed to you, we looked at, funding. And so here, 21% of their funding they got from investments, other investments. They got 20% of their funding from the banks, 20% from owner equity, and debt investors at 39%. Why do you think this is really important in terms of how they secure their funding? And what lessons can you learn as you're beginning to have to grapple with going out getting capital to fund your ideas? Any thoughts in terms of why this could be very pivotal? Well, one thing, it shows diversity. And that's what you want to be able to do, have diversity. And most importantly, what I do like about it, they do claim a 20% equity ownership in their own business. But they're leveraging other investment in terms of raising capital for their business. And this very well could be other investment could came from family or friends or crowdfunding. You can get a debt investor who's willing to invest in equity in your business. And of course, the traditional bank financing. But I think what this model again shows is if you're going to go after a development business that you're going to need funding, look at diversifying your funding sources. Next slide. Okay, so that was the revenue side in terms of how they were securing revenue for the business. And now we're looking at the use of those funds. What are they using them for? Well, lease payments, miscellaneous costs, website development, working capital, marketing, coffee supplies and inventory, retail insurance, improvement, full-time employee and expenses that came with that, and lease deposits. And so we recently sent you a budget. Michelle, did we send that out to everybody? Michelle,
yeah, it was sent out this Monday.
Okay, so folks, take some time and start to play around with your numbers and start to put together your budgets, your revenue plus your expenses, and use projections in terms of what you think it may cost to fixate your startup budgets. And you may do the same thing on the revenue side, looking at what kind of sources of revenue would you think that you could secure or would look to securing for your businesses. Next slide, Michelle. All right, okay. I hope you found that exercise useful. We'll be sending out these recordings to all of you. Yeah. Mhm. Any questions? This is, this is one of the reasons why I always emphasize that you want to be able to do your own business plans, because you're going to have to be able to tell that story to whomever that you may approach in terms of um, defining or articulating what kind of resources are going to be needed, how you plan on deploying the resources to help grow your business, um, understanding your market share, your competition. Um, it was said earlier about this being a living document. You may not have no competition today, and all of a sudden pops up somebody's next door to you, selling the same product you're selling, or offering the same services that you're offering. So you want to make sure, that you are versed in understanding your business plan. Yes, get someone else to write it, help you write it, but you need to participate in that process as well. Any questions?
This is Angelique, and
Oh, okay.
I, I
Welcome,
I
welcome.
I did a business plan before a while ago, but I know I need to update it. I like the fact that you talk about the business plan should be just like a working document. But my question is about the SWOT analysis. Like, is there, I mean, I did one a long time ago, but I need to update it and do one. Is there anything particular? Because I got a lot of, I have a number of businesses in my area for one of the businesses that I have. And it's like 30 of them around.
30 businesses that are doing the same business you're doing
Yeah,
in your neighborhood?
yeah.
What you selling? What you selling? Chicken wings and French fries? That's I don't. I'm sorry. I didn't want to go there, but it just seemed like a good segue.
That was an excellent segue, but no, for the coalition, me and Chioma is working together to do the baby shower. I do community baby showers. I actually have my own childcare facility.
There are
I
30. Are you telling me there are 30 child care facilities in your immediate neighborhood?
and my need maybe I just looked it up. I found a document that I got offline. But the thing about it is, I have my daycare is unique, and so that is where my difference come in, because I have these are daycare centers like Bright Beginning, who is owned by Mitt Romney, Educare, who is owned by what's his name? That rich guy, Warren Buffett. And so I applied for those one of those grants when I found out that they were the owners, but I wasn't afraid and didn't back down. But I live in Ward 2 by the White House, and there are a number of facilities, but they're bigger. So I also have a home daycare. And this one, I take care of children with special needs. So that is my niche, and the rest of them don't.
Okay.
But so my SWOT analysis, I know to use that as my strong pinpoint, but what other factors, should I have in there? And would you be sending us a copy of? I did see the business plan, but I didn't see.
Yeah, we're gonna say. The question I would ask in terms of looking again, going back to research.
Mhm.
What is the birth rate in your immediate census tracts that you have delineated as your market share? What is the birth rate?
Oh, let me tell you. Oh, the birth rate is truly high in the District of Columbia, but we're also the highest for infant mortality rates. My daycare stays full. I don't have a problem with that. But I was thinking about opening another one on 18th Street, a bigger one, and that is in business they always say the best business one-on-one. Location is everything. My
Yeah.
location downtown continues to stay full because regardless if I don't take care of children in my area, people who work downtown or work
Dropping off kids.
want to
So,
drop. So I'm in a great location.
so that goes back to that coffee uh, uh, example of they had sold bags, they sold cups, and they sold food. And
Mhm.
so as you sit down and think about your model, you coming up with some different products and services that you're offering.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you got the mainstream kids, and you got the special need kids, and then here you got drop off parents, and you got parents who are, I guess you call them transient
Yep,
workers,
the
right?
transit person. I also have DC government vouchers. I'm able to take those, and I also have convention parents. If like the guy who called me, Will Downing came to town to do a concert on Connecticut Avenue. He brought his grandkids with him, and they contacted me to take care of the kids.
Okay.
So but I don't actually like that part of it as much because they're high level people, so I have to make sure that I have the right people working in it. So that part I didn't know I could put that in my SWOT analysis. You know what I'm saying? The SWOT analysis.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think again, it's about your business plan tells your story.
Right.
Yeah, and so you have to structure. That's why I said nobody should write your business plan because all that you shared with me, if you ask somebody to write it, they wouldn't gather all this.
Okay.
That's why if you're going to ask someone to help you write it, that's a whole different ball game. So I've
Okay.
never passed it on to someone to say write me a business plan because all that you shared with me right now, they would not have any inkling that you had all that in terms of relationships, uh, in terms of your client base that you're dealing with. They wouldn't capture all that.
Right, but that's just good marketing. That's just good
Yeah, it's
marketing.
good for marketing. Yeah, 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 yeah. So getting back to your original question about the SWOT, I mean, you defined what your strengths are. You still there? You're disappearing on me. So you
Well,
define you defined your strengths. What are your weaknesses?
that I'm not that I'm not open 23 hours. I open from 6 to 6. So most people want me to stay open longer, but I still need to have a life. I'm not open on the weekends. So those are small weaknesses. And I just lost one of my awesome staff.
Well, then that makes that you can define that as a weakness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because are you building the staff capacity to take hold of business when you're not there?
Yes, my daughter, but my mom passed yesterday, and she was
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my
a big,
condolences. I'm sorry to hear that.
okay, but she
Oh, wow.
taught me to always keep going on no matter what. Time doesn't stop for anybody, and it's nothing you can do. So honor me by constantly doing what you need to do. I retired her years ago to work for me, and she did an awesome job. So I think that's just slowing me up just a little bit because I have to process the information.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
My condolences and prayers out to you and your family. Been there. Yeah. So the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities you've already defined the opportunities, and then of course you define the threats too, Angelique. So you talk about the SWOT itself. You've laid it really out there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems to me just what you've articulated, you have a sound understanding of your market.
I do the research. I do the work.
Yeah, yeah. That's what gets you to that point. Doing the research. Doing the research. Yeah. Yeah. I'm really excited to hear your story. Um, are there any other inputs from anybody this evening? Okay. Well, good. Well, good. Well, good. 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 Well, good. Well, I hope you found it useful. Michelle will make sure that we get out to you these recordings. Um, And tomorrow's session is with the folks from Shared Capital. So you'll get a chance to talk and Patrick learn a little bit how these banks, CDFIs, because it is a national CDFI, how they underwrite cooperative businesses. And so certainly I'm going to listen for you to ask them that question, because I want to hear their responses to it. All right.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, folks, another great session. I hope it was meaningful and thoughtful, and we took some things away. Looking forward to tomorrow's session. We'll get all the